Thank you for tuning in to Nobodies podcast. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You know what? Sometimes before we're getting ready for the podcast, I go and I turn at you and you're doing this like Clint Eastwood gaze into the distance.
Yeah.
You got this like strong warrior goddess gaze in the distance. And sometimes I wonder like, what is it that what's she thinking about?
I was actually just thinking about, I was listening to our intro. I love the intro. Her voice is so cute. That was literally what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. She seems like such like a nice lady. She's always got candy on her. It's always like chewing gum.
Always.
You know what I mean? She's always like making social media posts and like creating positive affirmations to post to her wall like every single day. She's like somebody that lives a pretty optimistic life.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I mean?
I like her. I think she's
But I can
really
relate.
cute.
I can relate to the gaze though, Jen. Sometimes you just have to take a moment, especially during golden hour when the sun's starting to set, and you just like take that little opportunity to sit with yourself in nature and stare off into the distance and just ponder life.
Yeah.
You know?
Or ponder how old you are, which was thrown in my face this past weekend at Big Wild.
What? Oh, how old are you? Oh, that's right. You went to a Big Wild show. What happened?
Yeah. And it was so much fun, but it was like the cast of Euphoria was the crowd. Everybody there was 18. Like I would be shocked if there was anybody, that was over 30 there other than us.
Oh, really?
And and it was at Red Rocks, and Red Rocks is super, super beautiful. And the sounds bounce off the rocks, and it's just like, it's awesome. It's like going to a concert in a cave. Mm-hmm. So long and short of the story, a friend of ours, he had his teenage son and his friends go save us some seats. So, and of course we paid them to save us seats because we're old, right? We're not going to sit out there from 3:00 in the afternoon until 10:00 at night, whenever the show starts, to save our seats. Yeah, we had shit to do. So long and short of the story, we get there and we sit in our, we come up, and then the kids leave and we exchange the seats, and all of the kids behind us hated us. So,
Why? Is it because you guys were tall and they were short, or what?
No, just because we didn't wait there for the seats that we showed up, right when the concert started, and, had second row. And so we explained to them like, hey, no, these are our kids, and we're, we paid them to hold our seats and X, Y, and Z. So a little girl in front of me turns around and she goes, I think it's really cool that you're here at this concert and you like this type of music. And I was like, my little heart was crushed. I was like, what? What do you mean?
What do you think she meant by that? What do you think she meant by that? Because I can see two potential reasons for that.
What she meant is, you're too old to be here, and I'm really shocked that you like the kind of music that I like because you're 25 years older than me.
I don't know, Jen. Well, first of all, you look young. I don't care what anybody says. You look young. You look like somebody that would be her age. But at the same time, she could have also just, chummed up a conversation with you, and you had good energy, and she was like, you're cool. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here watching this show.
Oh, no. We were not speaking at all. She just turned around. No? She was watching us and then just said that.
So in what way did she say it? Did she give you sort of like I'm glad you guys are here with all these young people? You know what I mean?
It was like she meant it as a compliment. When somebody says like, oh, you look good for your age. That's meant to be a compliment, but it's kind of like a passive aggressive backhanded compliment.
Yeah. And then considering her age, she probably didn't even realize that was sort of a backhanded compliment.
Oh yeah, probably not. I mean, she was like 18 years old for sure.
Maybe you know what? 16, when I'm 40, 50 years old, I hope that I'd still be going to shows like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I feel like nowadays it's a lot more socially acceptable to attend shows like that.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, I've been going to those types of shows for a long time, even down to festivals. And there's really that sort of idea of there needing to be like the proper age for somebody to go to events like that. I don't know. I think that's old news. I'm kind of taking Gary Vaynerchuk's sort of perspective on, 40 is the new 30, And I think the sort of acceleration of technology and social media and people's ability to extend, the duration of their life, people, I imagine, are living a little longer, but also like aging emotionally, maybe a little slower. People are a little bit more playful now. And I think that maybe has something to do with people aren't taking life as seriously as they did back in the sort of nuclear family era.
Yeah. I mean, people aren't getting married and starting families at, 21 years old anymore either. People are waiting a lot longer. And I think whenever you have a family to support and take care of and you're married, I don't know, it just kind of forces you to grow up.
Yeah. And considering it's not, I mean, real talk, it's not financially sort of viable for people to even have kids right now. Right.
It's
so
not.
A lot of people are sort of bypassing that process, getting themselves some cats or some dogs. And incidentally, they're able to attend events like that. Otherwise, if they had children, they'd be at home with the kids. And I imagine somewhere in the Midwest they do that, but here in the Western states, I think you see a little bit more of like those people flying it solo without kids.
Oh, for sure. It's not right now. It's not even financially viable to run your AC. I mean, it's like everything is so expensive.
I know. It's crazy. You know what? I was in the store the other day. This is actually a really interesting story. And not a lot of people would have picked this up, but I picked it up for whatever reason because I tend to somehow catch on to certain things like this. I was in a store and I saw a guy standing in a grocery aisle for like 20 minutes trying to figure out what kind of beef jerky he wanted. Can you believe this shit? And the only reason why I knew this is because I was walking around. I had like a list of things that I wanted. I typically don't like to spend too much time in the store, but I kept passing by him. And every single time I'd pass by him, he was in the exact same spot. His head was sort of tilted up a little bit. And you see like his little beady eyes moving from the left and to the right. And he just couldn't figure out which one he wanted. And I just thought to myself like, whoa, this is the type of world that we live in where we have to like really, really sit and think about what type of food or beef jerky that we want. Like, I wonder what's going through his mind when he's sitting there trying to figure that out.
I can tell you what's going through his mind. I look at the packages of beef jerky to see which ones look soft and which ones look like they're going to be hard. And then I look at the price because beef jerky is really expensive. And then the flavor, like, do I want peppercorn? Do I want teriyaki? Do I want original?
Oh my gosh, you're one of them, Jen. You're one of them.
Yes, I am a
But
beef
for 15, 20 minutes,
connoisseur.
I don't know. I can't justify that. You would sit there for 10 or 15 minutes with your eyes all wide.
But I'll stand there for 5 and I'll read the packages and I'll try to decide which one looks like it's going to be the best.
I don't know. I took it to a completely different direction. I was thinking to myself like, man, people's inability or fear of wanting or of not wanting to make the right, people's fear of making the wrong decision, like this guy was trying to decide what kind of beef jerky he wanted. Like his entire life depended on it. You know what I mean? Like that was what he was going to eat for the entire week. And I just thought to myself like, man, you can see the gears going. And I thought it was really interesting because we tend to kind of pull the same sort of practice when it comes to lots of things in life that we have difficulty making decisions for. And it even can come down to the smallest, most insignificant thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. If you think your life is hard, always remember, kids, there's some dude standing in a grocery store for 20 minutes trying to figure out what kind of beef jerky he wants to buy. So choose wisely, but don't afraid to be wrong. Don't afraid to make the wrong decision. The first decision is usually always the best one. So you know what, you always got to be learning wherever you go. And that was just one of those things I observed. I just thought it was crazy, how deeply the mind can interfere with the really seemingly simple process.
And when it comes to things like beef jerky, I think beef jerky is delicious. I know that you are a vegetarian, so you don't, but
oh man,
it's kind of like pizza or sex. Like even the worst sex you've ever had was still just fine. And that's true. How I feel. That's how I feel about beef jerky.
That's like pizza too.
It's going to be all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right.
It doesn't matter what kind of pizza it is. It's all good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Jen, I started making orgonite pyramids again. I thought I'd let you know because it's one of those things that had been out of order for a while.
I want one.
Out of commission for a while. You want one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody commissioned me to do one. And of course, the way that I approach it is I always kind of sit with them. But this one is actually a birthday gift. But typically when I make orgonite pyramids, it can be like a really intimate thing, especially because crystals are involved. I'll usually do like a reading. I'll do a card reading if they don't know what they want. And the card reader will more or less determine, what it is, what type of crystals that I'll put in the orgonite, right? So if anybody's not familiar with orgonite, I'll just go over really, really quickly what it is. So in the 1930s, there was a form of energy that was noticed by an Australian psychoanalyst called Dr. William Reich. And he was actually, I didn't know this until later, but he was a student of Sigmund Freud, who we all know who he is. And he coined this name called orgone energy. It can also kind of be considered chi or prana, how we in the sort of New Age world look at energy. He called orgone. And I guess his research revealed that organic materials will draw in and capture orgone energy, and non-organic materials will simultaneously draw and repel that energy. So his whole process was about taking negative energy, it could be negative frequencies that are in the air, negative EMF waves and things like that, and retransmuting them to be positive orgone energy, right? And so it's basically this whole alchemy of transforming negative into a positive. And this guy created something that was called an orgone chamber. And it was a 6-sided box constructed of alternating layers of organic materials to attract the energy, and then metallic materials to radiate the energy towards the center of the box. And he had patients that had cancer, different type of ailments. And he believed that if you sat in this orgone chamber for an extended period of time, it would rebalance out the energy centers in your body. And he believed that it was able to successfully sort of cure people of ailments and these type of conditions, right? And something weird happened is that I guess the FBI raided his home and took all of his shit. And then they coined it off as a pseudoscience, and sort of his work got lost in the shuffle. But it wasn't until later on in like the early 2000s that there was a couple by the name of Don and Carol Croft, and they wanted to use the same sort of concept of orgonite by introducing crystals. Right? So this added like an added layer of transmutation of this energy, and got into the realm of the etheric. And so I was really inspired by this. Organites are said to help eliminate electromagnetic frequencies in the air, improve health, relieve stress. It can assist with a lot of different things. So I want to be a team player in that, and I decided that I wanted to learn how to do it. I ended up starting to make them in 2012, and that's when I started pouring the resin and things like that. So I started making these organites. And ever since then, it's been like a really cool thing. You can use things like black tourmaline or obsidian if you want to create orgonite around protection and things like that. And I started an Etsy store a while back where I started selling them, and it grew so fast. I had like metaphysical shops overseas that were wanting me to create these orgonite pyramids for their stores. And I'll be honest with you, it was kind of overwhelming because the way that I approach making orgonite isn't in a mass-produced type of way. I'm more of like somebody that will only make it if I feel inspired to do it. And so it was going well for a long time, but I got kind of burnt out on it. So I stopped making it for a while. So I started making them again. But the one thing that I thought was really cool is when I was selling them on Etsy, a lot of people would send me pictures of where they put it or tell me what they were going to do with them. And there was like a woman in New Zealand that said that she would leave them out in the fields in New Zealand. There's some woman that lived in Hong Kong, and she like took a picture of it with like the city of Hong Kong in the background. So it's like this idea of creating this sort of mini crystal grid around the planet.
Oh, wow.
All these different orgonite pyramids that I've made.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. I remember you making orgonite back in the day, and I was just about to ask if you reopened your Etsy store. So are you going to, you haven't opened it yet?
I haven't opened it yet, but right now I'm going to focus on the commissioned ones because I know a lot of people that would want them, you included. So I'm going to like work on those and get a feel for how my style has changed since I stopped making them. And if anybody that's interested, if you want to see some of my orgonite, you could actually go on my personal IG, which a lot of people that do follow the podcast also follow my personal IG under Eric Ajna. You can find pictures of my orgonite pyramids there. And if you guys like them, hit me up. Aww. I can make one specifically for you. This wasn't a plug, but just letting you know because it's been really inspiring for me because I made this one for this fellow. It was his birthday. And I'm always surprised at how they come out because you never know how they're going to come out until you pop them out of the mold. And when you pop them out, it's like you're seeing this birth of this thing. And the thing that I didn't really do a whole lot of back in the day is I would never keep any for myself. Every piece that I ever made, I'd always give to somebody or I'd sell it. So I want to focus on making some pieces that can be really proud of that I can just keep in my own personal stash.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you got to make something for yourself.
Got to make something for yourself.
I think it's really beautiful. You make some of the most beautiful organite pyramids I've ever seen.
Really, Jen?
Because I've seen like different ones online and, have ordered different ones, and the acrylic isn't super clear, or there's bubbles in it, or they don't put real crystals in it. It's like some bullshit plastic from China. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I've been seeing a lot of those now. And if you go on Etsy, unfortunately, that's what makes up the bulk of them. People that mass produce them and they use cheap materials. But there's two types of organite that you can really find. I respect the people that want to make organite for the sheer functionality of it. Like if you look at an organite pyramid, like traditional, how it looks, it doesn't really look like anything all that beautiful, because more often than not, they're placing them under these cell phone towers, or they're placing them in like an area of their house that's inconspicuous. But then there are this other group of people that make organite for their home and to use it as a part of like their altar. So those ones tend to be a little bit more beautiful. So there's such a large range of how people make them. And I wanted to try and integrate the whole classic method, but also make something really beautiful,
Yeah, we have like a big power plant really close to our house. So I need a organite pyramid that has some like EMF blocker.
All right, you got it. We're doing God's work now. This isn't just about organite. We're saving the world with this shit. Because that's got to stop. That has got to stop, Jen. Whatever's happened at that little plant across the way, that has got to stop. Right? All right, you guys. Thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to dive into something a little, I want to say fun, but fun in the sense that I think a lot of people can relate to this, because if you've been in a relationship, it doesn't even have to be with a significant other. It can be with a friend. Could be with your family, could be with your dog. Well, I don't know if it can be for your dog, but we're going to be talking about common phrases to avoid in relationships. Common phrases to avoid in relationships. Oh, by golly, Jen, I think I've probably said all of them at some point in my life.
Yeah, I know I have too. And there's one that I say all the time. When we get to it, I'm going to call it out.
Oh, you have one that you still say, Jen?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I want to know about that.
And it's on the list. And I was like, oh man.
And this is the thing, right? Relationships are an ongoing practice for everybody, every single person. There isn't one person out there that's mastered the art of relationships, because human beings are complex. We're always changing. We're always growing. And we're also on this little planet called Earth in a life that doesn't always work in our favor. So we're always being subject to lots of different things that can make an impact on our relationship, make an impact on how we behave in relationships. And thus sometimes we fall into conflict with our partners and we end up saying some shit that we don't mean, right? So
That's right.
We wanted to dive into just going over some common phrases to avoid in relationships, things that we should be really conscious of. And I think for the most part, if we're on the spiritual journey, or if anybody's listening to this podcast, I think to some degree, we probably try and practice some mindfulness and to be conscious of the things that we say to others, because we realize how detrimental it is for, the safety and the health of our relationships. So we wanted to go over some common phrases to avoid, maybe some of our experiences with these things, and how we can sort of switch the phrases to I want to say just communicate it in a better way, because everybody says these things in response to emotions that they're trying to express to their partner, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't always, especially when we feel triggered, we don't always say those things in the way that we really want to say them. We say crazy shit, right? So see if we can change that narrative a little bit and find and explore different ways that we could speak to our partners in a way that's a little bit more constructive, right?
Right.
You ever said a lot of stuff that you didn't mean to say, but you said it anyways, Jen?
Oh my God, I do it all the time. I get diarrhea of the mouth and I just start talking. And then as soon as it comes out of my mouth, it happens on the podcast all the time too. And I'm very grateful for your editing skills, because I know I say some crazy shit.
I'm like, Jen, you can't say that.
You can't say that.
Like, Jen, did you realize we're doing a podcast, right? No, it's not like that, but it happens. It happens in a podcast.
It does happen. Yeah.
Sometimes, especially for me, and like I like to speak my thoughts out sometimes. And the issue that I have sometimes is that the other person doesn't always know that I'm kind of talking to myself. They think that the words that I'm saying are directed towards them. And so sometimes I inadvertently end up saying something that I don't mean, because I'm I'm talking out my feelings or I'm talking out loud, you know,
Yeah.
but at the same
I'll
time, I'm
talk
also
like,
human.
yeah, 100%. I'll talk because I don't have a complete thought. I just have the beginning of a thought and I'll start talking it through. And then, you know, sometimes the communication there gets wonky. And sometimes it's something that maybe I shouldn't have said out loud and I should have just left as a thought, you know?
Yeah. And we all say those things, you know, there's so many things we have to pay attention to in life. And it can be really difficult sometimes to be always conscious of the things that we say. You know, Don Miguel Ruiz says, be impeccable with your words. And, you know, as simple of a statement that is, it can be really difficult sometimes because, you know, everybody is so different in how they give and receive information, right? You have relationships that thrive off of sarcasm, right? You have relationships that thrive off of poking fun and, you know, playing with each other. And it's really important when you're with your partner that you share that sort of agreement so that the words that you share aren't misinterpreted. You know, there are some couples that are more old fashioned and they like the whole, you know, speaking to each other in a more conventional way. And you have some relationships that sort of push the boundaries of what you can get away with. And some people see it as a game. So what I'm just trying to say is that everybody's so different. That's the reason why it's so hard sometimes to always say the right thing, because you have your own sort of unit that you have at home. But if you're somebody that has a job and works out in the real world, you're surrounded by people you don't really know. And all those people aren't always exactly like you. So if you're having a meeting with somebody at work, we always find ourselves having to adjust our personality in the best way as to kind of play it safe with people that we don't know. But sometimes we end up saying stuff we don't mean. Do you ever go through that in your position? I mean, you're in a position where you kind of deal with lots of people. Do you ever have situations where you witness people saying crazy stuff? Are you doing it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have over the years become a lot more mindful of the things that I say. And especially as I like started getting promoted and was in a leadership role and, you know, managing other people. When you manage other people, you especially can't say anything. You have to become a very, very good listener because people are only coming to their manager whenever they have a problem, right? So it's always like a crisis or some type of de-escalation. And I found that the best thing to do is not offer advice, not try to fix it, just listen, and then talk through what their goal is and what they're trying to achieve, right? Like, okay, well, we have this problem. So if you had a magic wand, what would make this better? Like, what would be perfect in your mind? And then I'm able to kind of better understand what they're looking for. And sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes I'll listen to someone talk and I think that their problem is A, but their problem's not A, it's really B, you know?
Yeah. So it's like expected that we'll run into, you know, kind of semi-uncomfortable conversations because, you know, people also need to set their boundaries around what it is that they, you know, are able to accept as far as your communication. I'm talking like in relationships. And at the same time, like we will say things that we don't mean. And, you know, it's always good to be able to have a conversation with someone that's understanding and that isn't too reactive. And you can create a safe space where you can like really articulate how you feel so that you're not misunderstood. My issue that I used to have for a long time is I would say things out of a type of anxiety or a type of nervousness, especially when it involved being in front of people I wasn't comfortable with or in large groups. And so I would stumble upon my words and I'd end up saying something stupid, you know, and I don't have that. I still have that issue every once in a while. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely on a date where it matters the most, Jen, where it matters because you only get one shot with the dates these days, especially on Tinder. They'll ghost your ass. But
that's right.
You got to be really, really careful. You got to be on your best behavior. You know, it's interesting because everybody has their own sort of form of triggers, even if they don't know you. It's like this instinctual response people have that when you're meeting somebody for the first time or you're talking to a partner, you say the wrong thing. You don't even know that you're saying the wrong thing. And we'll get an instinctual sort of reactive response that can sometimes come across as being angry or upset, you know?
Right.
And everybody kind of has these. So I think it's learning how to communicate with the people that are in our life, making the adjustment where necessary, which the adjustment is going to happen because everybody's so different. And, you know, like learning how to communicate. But as it pertains to this conversation, we're going to be talking about how this whole thing flies in relationships. Two people, right? And the
That's
relationships are always the best one to focus on, because a lot of the most powerful work that we experience in life, as far as the whole spiritual evolution piece, happens in our relationships, because relationships test us in ways that other things can't. And especially if we have partners, we're likely either living with them or we spend a lot of time with them. We spend more time with our partners or significant others or people in our family more than anybody else. And those people get to know everything about you, right? And because they get to know everything about you, they know how to make you happy. But at the same time, they sure know how to deliberately piss you off, because they know what your triggers are, right?
Exactly.
And so, so we all develop our own process with our partners. So common phrases to avoid in relationships, I would just always stay with one of the one that mind you, all of these ones that we're going to go over, I'll admit I've done all of these in relationships I've gone through in the past, and I've learned a lot from making these types of mistakes. And my hope is that, of course, if you continue saying these things, that you'll learn in just the same way. But realistically, though, I think if we're human, we're going to fall into saying these things every once in a while. But just be careful, be mindful. So you always or you never, Jen?
Oh my gosh.
You ever said you always or you never?
Yeah, that was on every single list of whenever I was researching this topic. Every single list that popped up on common phrases to avoid, that was on it.
Really?
And yeah, and I can see why. You always or you never. Like, that is automatic accusatory fighting words. Like, there's nothing positive that's coming from that, and you're not looking to elicit some type of positive response whenever you say that.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's totally true. Yeah, it seems like there's a reflex, because there's always is sort of like a common reflex when it feels like our partner is continuously doing something wrong or that hurts our feelings. Like you said, it sounds accusatory. But the thing that about using always and never is it's this, every argument that somebody goes through in a relationship is always about a very specific thing. It usually starts that way, right? He didn't do the dishes, or he didn't wash the dishes or take out the trash, something like that. And it starts with a specific thing. When you venture into the realm of using, you always do this, you're reaching into the past. Like, you're reaching really far into the past, and it's almost like you're speaking to them that you have a log of information, and that information contains all the things that you've ever done that are kind of like this one thing, like not emptying the trash, right? And it almost shows in a lot of ways that you're not forgiving them for those things, because you're bringing them into your moment, and it's comprised of this statement, this conclusive statement that says, you always do this. That implies more than one, right? So it's like, it's a really dangerous place to go, because all of a sudden you're talking about a specific thing to, more often than not, these conversations go into the past, and all of a sudden you guys are talking about things that you argued about a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. And, that can be a really dark place to go,
Yeah, especially when the whole goal in life is to live in the present moment. And every time you say you always, you're like, just like you said, you're going back to the past and you're living your life in the past. And nothing good comes out of that. And that blocks all your blessings and all of your manifestations whenever you transport yourself back to the past.
Yeah. You always and you never, more often than not, is not generated by true feelings. It's a triggered response, right? If you can replace always or never with fear. These are the types of things that the ego says when it feels triggered, right? These are things that fear says. When we use conclusive phrases like this in a discussion, I notice that we tend to fall into black or white sort of polarity thinking, right? We lose sight of the fact that there's a gray zone. And that gray zone is the specifics that initiated the conversation. The black or white thinking is classifying your partner as entirely bad because of this, and judging all of his sort of collective experience in doing these things puts you in a really, really bad situation with your partner, right? It tends to open up the discussion to past situations which really have no place in a conversation. This is one thing that we're probably going to stress about through this entire podcast today, is that the past situations are, at least to me, what cause a lot of problems in arguments with people. right? When they don't stick to just the task at hand or the argument at hand, they go into the past, and all of a sudden you're revisiting old traumas, you're revisiting old arguments, and those things have no place in the conversation, because just like you said, living in the present moment is where you are. You're not in those situations anymore. So it's important to, if you love your partner, to forgive them for anything that they had done in the past, within reason, of course, and just focus and never losing sight of the fact that in this moment, maybe they did do something wrong, but don't tell them that they always or that they never do it, never do something. You know what I mean?
And because that's also not true. You know, like even if somebody does something more than once, maybe they do it twice, 3 times. It's not always. Always means, you know, always, every day. You know, every time they do this task, they always do this. So you just gotta be careful.
Really important to understand the context. It can even be something really innocent too. Like, for example, I always think of this one because I think I've heard this before, where a woman says to her partner, like, "You never take me out anymore." And the man responds with, "I took you out like last week." Right?
Right.
That is innocent in the sense that he's thinking rationally and practical about it. She's trying to convey a feeling. She's trying to convey an emotion.
Yep.
Right? So if he's like, "Oh, yeah, I took you out last week," and she's like saying, "Oh, you never take me out," she's trying to tell you that she doesn't feel loved or seen, and that she wants to feel more of that through the act of maybe going out. So there's like a nuance in there that you got to pay attention to. That's an innocent thing, but you know, that is also something that involves communication and understanding your partner. Right? So don't lose sight of the reason for the argument, and focus only on what is true in the moment and how you feel pertaining to that situation. Right? And another way of looking at this too would be, you know, focus on what your partner does right and talk about what you love about them. You know, how they can use their positive qualities in order to overcome whatever negative situation you happen to be in. And I'm probably going to say that more than once on this one, on this podcast, but the type of growth mentality, right, Jen?
Yeah, that's right.
So don't say you always or you never. Focus on the specifics of your conversation. Don't tread back. Don't go into the past. You don't need to go back. There's nothing there for you. You know?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one I have here. What's that?
Yeah. I was gonna comment on the next one.
Oh yeah,
so
go ahead.
The next one is my phrase that I say all the time. And I didn't even realize how dismissive and uninterested I sounded, but the word is whatever. So even if you're talking to a partner about picking out a place to eat and your response is, whatever, it comes across as being dismissive, like you're not interested in going to eat with them or being engaged in a conversation, that you're just putting no effort or thought into it at all. And I say whatever because I really don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But really I was like, oh man, well, I guess that is dismissive. So that's certainly something I'm going to have to work on.
Has somebody brought that up as an issue to you before, Jen?
No, he's never brought it up, but it was on a list, and I was like, oh man.
I don't know. I have some feelings about this one. About the ones. Well, you can go a step further. Like, it's one thing for someone to say whatever, but have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, whatevs?
I think whatevs is different because it's cutesy. It's like, has that. Yeah, it's cutesy. It's not like, whatever.
Whatevs.
It's like,
no, that's like saying
whatevs.
like you don't care enough to say the entire word, Jen. Like, whatevs. Whatevs. It's like that tired Los Angeles sort of response. It's like, whatevs. But, you know, like whatever, I think this is one of those ones that like, it really depends on who your partner is, right? Like what type of agreement you guys have or what type of relationship you guys have. Because if somebody, you know, if my partner wants to go out to eat, I'm like, whatever. Like, and she's like, well, where do you feel like going? I'm like, whatever. I don't think she's going to interpret that, or she doesn't interpret that as a negative thing, you know? But if you're on like maybe like a date with somebody and they're like, hey, would you like to do this? And they're like, whatever. And you're like, oh, that's a little different.
Yeah. I think the tone has a lot to do with it too. You know, the way your face looks and the tone. So if you naturally have a resting bitch face, maybe stay away from whatever. Yeah. But if you just have this sunny disposition and you're like, oh, whatever, then I think that's perceived a little differently.
Oh my gosh, what if you responded to Jeremy and asked you a question, and instead of just saying whatever, you put like the little W fingers on your forehead and were like, whatever. Remember that shit?
Oh, that's so 90s. I love it.
Pulled a whole like Clueless vibe on him. Oh, I wonder how he'd feel about that one. I wonder if anybody's ever experienced that before. But that one's good. That one I don't feel is like a make it or break it scenario. But when you're in a fight though, like if you're in a fight in a really heated argument and you're like, she's telling you how she feels, he's telling you how he feels, and you're just like, whatever. And you just walk off.
Yeah. That's not a good way to end an argument. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you got to be really careful about that one. Okay, so I'm sorry that you feel that way, Jen.
This is okay. So this is kind of revisiting those passive aggressive phrases. Right. And I'm sorry you feel that way is not an apology. That's not how you start an apology. And it's not perceived as an apology. It's perceived as like, you hurt me, so I feel justified in hurting you. And there you go. There you have it.
Yeah.
It's like tit for tat.
We lose sight in relationships of the fact that you're one, even though you're individual people, you guys, the idea of a relationship always involves two people, right? And the hope is that if they're a loving relationship, they're one sort of unit, right? You're this machine trying to make something beautiful happen. And it's really important to never lose sight of the fact that you and whatever happens between you and a partner happens to both of you, right? It's really important to be on the same page. So when you say something like, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way, we're invalidating how the other person feels, right? It's almost like us saying, we don't care to understand what you're going through. That is your thing. You need to figure that out. I'm sorry that you feel that way, but me over here, I'm good. You know, it's as if to say that you're not at all taking accountability for any hurt or sadness that you may have caused in the conversation. Right. Which is an unconscious response, because if that fight or that argument exists, it's because of something that you both are sort of perpetuating and escalating. Right. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that any sort of argument that happens, it affects both of you equally, right or wrong. If she's upset, you know, and she's angry, that will negatively impact your relationship because she's the partner that you're with. Like, she's a part of this sort of organism that you're creating, right? And just like you said, 100%. It can be seen as a half-hearted apology, which sort of eliminates you from having to take responsibility.
Yeah. You know? I mean, that's not an apology. And when you use, I'm sorry you feel that way in that way, like as a ruse for an apology, whenever you really are apologizing, it's a little less impactful, you know, because your words have memory, right? And people take what you say and it stores in their long-term memory. And whenever they get a real apology, they're thinking like, oh yeah, this doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And if somebody says that to you, if somebody says, I'm sorry that you feel that way, I mean, definitely think about why they're saying that. I mean, if that person really cares about you, they'll spend the time to try and understand how you feel, right? Like we both care and love for our partners. If my significant other happens to be upset or they're going through something, even angry, and it has something to do with me, if I love and care about them, but if I love and care about myself, I'll want to know how I've contributed to her pain. Right. And I'll also want to know how she feels so that I could understand where she's coming from. So that involves two people that actually care about each other. So if you have somebody that's just telling you, I'm sorry you feel that way, I would, if it's a early on sort of thing and you're dating somebody, I'd really think about that, because they could be somebody that is, you know, largely inconsiderate of your feelings, doesn't want to spend the time to try and understand you. You should be on the same team, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. What about what about calm down or relax?
Oh, calm down or relax. I have a feeling. That when someone tells you that, it makes you really mad.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do the opposite of relax. Whenever you tell me to relax, I'm just like, yeah, Halloween kitty, for sure.
It's like when you say relax, that's like saying, you're in this place of peace and is in peace and bliss and completely unaffected by the fact that your partner's livid and pissed at you. And you're just trying to bring them down to your level, which I don't know. I don't think that's ever worked for anybody, because there's nothing that makes a partner more upset than to know that their partner is completely unaffected by the fact that you're angry. You know, so they're just dismissive and they're like, hey, relax, calm down.
Relax. And you know, a lot of the times I think people say relax in a way where they're trying to be, give you a cue that it's not a big deal and, you know, that they're not upset. But the way that it can come across is making the other person feel like you think they're overreacting. And that, you know, the intensity of their feelings is just a complete overreaction. So maybe instead of saying like, calm down or relax, just don't say anything. Just listen to what they have to say, and validate their feelings.
Right. You calm. Exactly. That's exactly what I would do. And if you're in that place where you guys have that sort of connection, you could, like in a really gentle way, if they happen to be sort of worked up, allow them the space to communicate how they feel. Then they won't need to relax. They'll just naturally relax on their own. You won't need to tell them. You know?
Exactly.
You want to give your partner you want to trust and empower your partner to work through their stuff and be there for them. They're going to solicit you for information because you're on the other half of that relationship, and you want to communicate how it is that you feel, because the goal is so that she understands where you're coming from and that you both understand each other. And maybe at the end of that, you both can sit down in lotus pose and just do some mindful breathing exercises together, and you both can calm your asses down together. Right?
Yeah. You know, and I think that it's a good technique for if you are remaining calm and the other person is losing their shit. As long as you remain calm, that seems to de-escalate the situation. Somebody's not going to continue to act crazy if you're acting very calm.
It's true.
You don't need to say it. I mean, you just be the example.
Yeah. I mean, there's two ways that you can go about it. Like when somebody is deliberately pretending to be calm just to spite you.
Oh, that's annoying.
That's the one that's super annoying. That's the one that we're talking about. People that are like, oh, you need to relax, right? The sort of spiritual bypassing that we need to relax. You're being too dense and too callous right now. You need to get down to this sort of blissful level. Fuck that, right? I'm talking about if you guys spend some time talking with each other. You know, and human beings are really adaptable creatures. You're absolutely right, Jen, because if you're talking to somebody and you're being receptive, you're saying affirming things to them, you're listening, their energy will naturally sort of come down and match with yours. And then you guys can make sweet, sweet love down by the fire.
With some Kenny G playing in the background.
With some Kenny G and his fucking saxophone and his curly hair.
Some romantic saxophone.
What is it, George Michael? Some George Michael in the background?
Oh my gosh, I have the funniest Kenny G story. Well, actually, it's not really that funny. It's just very awkward, and it brings up a very awkward memory for me. So my girlfriend growing up, we were maybe like in the 5th grade, if I had to guess. And her mom was single. So we were supposed to be at my house, but she forgot something. So we came back to her house, and her mom went on a date. So, and she lived right down the street from me. So we just come barging in, and she is literally on the floor with this dude in front of the fire, and the Kenny G music is playing in the Kenny G music is playing in the background. And I will forever be scarred from that moment.
They were making sweet, sweet love, Jen?
They were doing something.
Oh, was it on a bearskin rug?
It wasn't, but this was the 90s, so it was like, carpet everywhere.
Oh, I'm trying to create an image in my mind. It's on a bearskin rug, right? Yeah. There's like a little fireplace right next door. There's like a guy like sitting in a rocking chair smoking out of a pipe.
Mm-hmm. You know. Yeah, it's Christmas time. There's snow in the windows.
It's Christmas time. There's like a little Christmas tree, and then you have this little couple just sitting on the floor making sweet, sweet love down by the fire. And he turns to her and he's like, "I'll never hurt you, baby." You know what I mean?
And by the way, you can't trust a guy. Your kid and her friend come barging in, in the middle of your only adult night in months.
And they're like, oh my gosh, Candace, what are you doing?
Like, ew, God, gross. Are you
Oh,
guys making out?
gross.
Ew.
Right? Something Candaces typically do. And it's like somebody else's house. It's not like theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, life's crazy. Okay, so this one is actually kind of a serious one, Jen. And this is one that I've experienced before, which is threatening to end the relationship.
Yeah. I
If you
think
don't
everybody's
mean
done
it.
that when they were young, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a
this
rough
is a
one.
really big one. And I don't really follow Tony Robbins very much, but I remember hearing a talk from him that he did a long time ago, and it was about relationships. I think Marianne Williamson also said something to this effect too, which is, relationships are like a sacred container, right? A lot of people that will call relationships that. But
Yeah.
relationships are developed and created by a lot of trust between two people, right? And so there's a foundation. That foundation that in relationships involves a great deal of trust. The trust is the strength, sort of the glue that holds everything together. It's what allows you to get away with certain things. It allows you to make mistakes. And you don't have to worry about losing your partner. Because if you're on the same team, you understand that you're both human and you're trying to make something happen, right? And so relationships are built on a foundation of trust and safety. So when you get into an argument with somebody, right, and you threaten to end the relationship, even if you don't mean it, those words stick. Those words stick with whoever it is that you're telling it to. It doesn't matter who it is. Those are words that are really difficult to forget when you hear them, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, the trust that we have is what allows us to be vulnerable and share our hearts with somebody and feel safe in a relationship. When somebody threatens to end your relationship, that trust can so easily be broken, and it can lead to a bunch of other things, which is not feeling safe to communicate with your partner, not feeling confident that they even want to be with you. It can create insecurity in relationships, right? It may lead to both partners being reluctant to share important like messages or feelings with each other. It just breeds a type of insecurity that can be really difficult to reverse once you get started. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for saying something if you really mean it. If you really feel like you want to, you want a divorce and you need to speak up and this is like the last, the final straw, and we really need to go to some counseling or do some work in this relationship or what have you, I think that that's okay. But whenever people use it as a way to bully the other person is unacceptable.
Or create fear in them.
Create fear. Yeah, exactly. If you don't really mean it, don't say that. That's, it's unacceptable.
Yeah. And there are some people out there that know that is a soft spot for you, right? That fear you guys breaking up, and they will see that and be like, okay, I can say this because I know it will make them upset. I know it will make them insecure. I imagine more narcissistic type of people use it as a way to create insecurity in the people that we're with. And it's fucked up that they do that, right? So do not say those things if you don't mean them. It can communicate to your partner that also at the same time that they're not worth fighting for and that the relationship isn't valued. For you to just, and I would imagine most argument type of situations are serious, right? But when you throw in a threatening to break up a relationship over, I want to say something relative to spilled milk, that shows that you don't really value the relationship, right? Because those are boundaries that you just do not cross.
No,
right?
I 100% agree. Yeah.
So this is it's a really important one, guys. I just want to stress that because I've been on the opposite side of this with somebody that has threatened to end my relationship so many times. And the feeling that it produces in you, especially when you hear it for the first time over somebody that you really care about, it hits different.
It sure does. And it triggers like all of those past abandonment issues that you had as a child and growing up.
Right.
And that's a huge trigger.
It's a huge trigger. And it can, like you said, it can trigger so many different things. And from my experience, the people that typically do that, if they say it and they don't mean it, are people that using it to manipulate other people.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Because that thing is like planting a mind bomb inside of in your mind. It's creating, it's planting this sort of seed inside of your gut that whenever you think of that, it creates a fear response inside of your body. And that fear response creates anxiety in us, creates insecurity in us. It also creates doubt in ourselves. And that can keep us bound to toxic people. It can keep us bound to relationships that aren't healthy because then we don't feel like we're worth it enough. You know, we don't feel loved. We don't feel lovable. So somebody says this to you and they don't mean it. If it's somebody that you care about, exercise a really strong boundary and tell them exactly what we're talking about. Like, you do not cross that boundary unless you mean it. And if they do threaten the relationship, and there are some people that have super strict boundaries, some people will just end up leaving that person because they're fucking around in that way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what do you think about backhanded and passive aggressive compliments? For example, you're so cute whenever you act dumb.
I really hope that there aren't people out there that say that kind of shit, Jen.
Oh, 100%.
Really?
100%. I had a girl come to my house for like a Valentine's Day party that we were having. And, you know, she was an acquaintance. She wasn't really a friend of mine. And she's looking around and she goes, wow, your house is actually kind of cute. Oh. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
Did she like wave her head kind of back and forth with some attitude?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like, your house is actually kind of nice.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Does she have like her little cigarette on her like little long sort of like 50s cigarette holder? Like with like a mink's jacket on? Yeah.
And high heels. And looking like everything is disgusting and dirty and she can't sit down anywhere.
Like in like an Aubrey Hepburn type of accent. She's like, wow, your house is actually kind of nice. You got to do a little. She said that shit to you, Jen?
Totally.
How do you respond to something like that?
Oh, you know, with people like that, there's always an angle, right? And typically people say those passive aggressive type compliments because they feel like they're going to get away with them. They feel like you're not smart enough to catch on, or they can just say it and totally get away with it because it's smothered in something nice.
Oh,
you know, like it's like something mean smothered in something nice. Yeah.
Like they don't think you're intelligent enough to pick up on it.
Yeah.
They think they're pulling 100%. A fast one on you. Mm-hmm. But they don't know that Jen is a genius. Right. They don't understand. They don't know that Jen is a cognitive behavioral therapist of the mind and can pick up that stuff real early. You know what I mean?
No, you know, it's, I've actually had people do this in relationships. Like the example that was given is like, you're so cute whenever you act dumb. Like,
who said that to you? Tell me that wasn't
ever said
a date.
That specific thing to me, but I have had men in the past say passive aggressive type compliments like that. And that doesn't feel good. And it lets the other person know that you are trying to be mean. And you know what? Right. Let's just be direct. You know, no sense of being passive aggressive. If you're unhappy about something, just say it. If you don't like something, just say it. You know, there's a nice way to say things. You don't have to say something like in a passive aggressive manner.
Yeah.
This really irks me at work too. I can't stand it when people are passive aggressive at work.
In relationships, this speaks to like a much larger issue, which is once the trust in your relationship is broken, there may be a series of arguments or, you know, somebody threatening to break up with you. Then you don't feel safe with sharing how you really feel with your partner. Doesn't matter how direct it is. You don't feel safe with explaining to them how you feel out of fear that you'll be judged, that you'll be ridiculed, that your thoughts won't be valued. And so what do? We still have to be human. We still have to have our preferences. We still have to be who we are in our relationship. But the issue that we have is we don't have a healthy way of communicating that to our partner. So what do? Right. We do passive aggressive shit, right? Like we'll say things to skirt around how it is that we really feel instead of just being what you said, direct, right?
Right.
I feel like people, younger kids can get away with it. This is a perfect example of what that kid said to you when you went to the Big Wild show, right? Because that was sort of like a backhanded compliment, but you know, the kid didn't know any better.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Is what she was trying to say is, wow, you're older. I recognize that you're older, and it's really cool that you're interested in things that I'm interested in, that we have this common ground and we have something in common. But whenever you say that to somebody that's trying to preserve her youth.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's
painful.
like somebody like coming up to you at a show and being like, isn't it past your bedtime?
Right. Exactly. Like, oh,
Right?
can I
Shouldn't
warm
you
your
already be in
bottle?
bed? Can I warm your bottle?
Do you need me to change your
Ooh.
diaper?
Yeah. Passive aggression that's one that I feel like every single person in the world does it in their relationships every once in a while.
And there is not a human on the planet more passive aggressive than a Southern grandma.
Oh, but
shit.
It's almost like they've paid their dues to be as callous and as passive aggressive as they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like those Southern grandmas, they don't mess around.
No. No.
Like they wake up at like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. They have the electronic poker machine in front of them. They're smoking their GPC cigarettes. They're watching the Andy Griffith Show. They got like a little bird who sings to the Andy Griffith Show theme song when it comes on. Those are some strong women. They're like baking pies at like 5 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, yeah. And the Southern women that are very concerned about how you look. So you get the hug where they kind of pat you down and feel your body and kind of feel you up a little bit and then go,
size you up.
I guess you're having fun at college. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Like I put on a few extra pounds and you noticed. Thanks for the feel me up hug and the passive aggressive compliment.
Yeah. Like you'll go and you'll get your lips done and you go to your Southern grandma and then she's just like straight up like, what did you do to your face?
Yeah. Oh no, that's just straight aggressive. That's not passive aggressive.
They're like, what happened?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, passive aggression. Yeah, I totally. This is another one, Jen. I hate it when.
Ooh.
I mean, when you're talking to them and you're just like, hate it when you do this. Yeah,
hate is such a strong word. And in any context that you use it, I hate you, I hate it when, that's the best way, like we were talking about damaging the foundation of a relationship and chipping away at that emotional safety. I hate you. Use the word hate in any context and that's a surefire way to damage the foundation of your relationship.
Yeah. Like they always tell you in relationships not to get too comfortable, right? Like not to get too comfortable. And I think what people mean by that is like after a while we stop respecting our significant other's boundaries. We stop we forget that they are an entirely different person that doesn't have to be with you, that is choosing to be with you. We just assume after a certain point when we get comfortable that they're just always going to be there. And so what that means is that we start paying less and less attention to the things that we say, right? We start paying less attention to the things that we say. And so we start getting used to unconscious behavior, unconscious communication, saying shit, passive aggression, playing around. And when those boundaries aren't respected and you get too comfortable, you stop being mindful of the words that you say. And that's when you start saying crazy stuff like, oh, I hate it when you do this. I hate it when you do that. It's pretty much the same as saying you always do this or, you never. Like really like conclusive statements that imply that this is who that person is. Like you hate them. You know? So it's like, I think we need to stop using phrases like I hate it when, and instead of, foster the positive elements of your relationship and build from what your partner does right. And this can only happen if you really care about each other, right? If you're in a relationship with somebody that you're saying you hate it when more often than not, if you are in a toxic relationship, develop enough courage to end it when you know that it needs to be ended. Because I noticed that the people that tend to like fall into this habit of always saying these type of things are almost blaming the other person that they're not happy. And it's like, if you're not happy with your partner, just end the relationship.
Right. Move on. Meet somebody else that you will be happy with, or be by yourself.
But the crazy thing is that it's, and I've been through this before. I know what this is like. There's some people that don't want to give up on a relationship, even if it's toxic. We love this idea of something going right, especially if it's somebody you're really attracted to. Like if you've ever met somebody you're really, really attracted to,
oh man,
you overlook a lot of crazy shit about them.
I have been dickmatized before, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Hypnotized by the dick. Yeah. That has
oh my
happened.
gosh, Jen.
And then, you overlook all of these red flags and terrible qualities in a person because the sex is good, or, they're really attractive, or, whatever earthbound emotions you're having. And, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Or you're just, you're romanticizing the beginning of your relationship. Say you're with somebody toxic. I don't need to say this because I've been with toxic people before. They call that whole love bomb phase at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Where the whole future faking thing has happened, and you get to experience this period of time at the very beginning of your relationship where it's perfect. And you can envision your life with this person. They're the most attractive person. They're perfect. And then all of a sudden that whole thing sort of turns sour and goes south. And you could beat yourself into oblivion by trying to recreate that with somebody that doesn't have the capability to sustain that. You know what I mean? Like the romanticizing of that beginning stage of your relationship, or even the idea of somebody changing, you can spend and waste a lot of years of your life chasing after a ghost, pretty much.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's important. It's important that if you are in a toxic situation, to pull yourself out of it and have enough courage to end it, and understanding, and just really understanding that there's nothing that you can do, overlooking how they look, and focus on whether or not you're being served and you're happy in the relationship.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
For sure. I have one that is not a negative phrase. It's actually a positive phrase. So let's talk about this one. I can't live without you.
Oh.
Yikes. So to me, this doesn't sound romantic at all. This sounds like a mental health red flag, and it just goes off in my mind. Danger, danger, danger. This person is codependent and needy and has an unhealthy attachment to you. I can't live without you. Yee.
Unless you're with like a Libra type, like me, for example, and you're both on the same vibe when it comes to, wanting to have a relationship like, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or maybe like Robin Williams and his partner in What Dreams May Come, or even like The Notebook, If you're striving for that sort of romantic story in your mind, you could, in like a very casual, sincere way, when you're laying down with your partner, right as the sun's starting to come up through the blinds and you guys stayed up all night having sex, you can turn to them while you're cuddling and whisper into their ear, I can't live without you. I can't live without you.
Yuck.
See, that's fucking beautiful, Jen.
No, don't say that to me ever.
What do you mean? So you're saying if you were cuddling with your partner and you guys like spent like a nice evening and you're just sort of rolling around in the sheets and you got the sun peeking through the blinds and they were cuddling with you and they were like, Jen, I can't live without you. You wouldn't find some little romance in that?
That would immediately make me feel like, I'm in trouble. Now I'm like stuck with this person forever. What happens if things don't go well? Like, oh no.
If it's not even in the delivery. You're just saying the words are just completely off limits.
No, the words are completely off limits. And especially if you're with an Aquarius, it will make them feel very uncomfortable and like a caged animal. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. I guess at the very core, I got to like take myself out of the clouds a little bit. If we're living on the earth with a bunch of people, I can see why it can be something that would be frowned upon. It's to say that you cannot live your own life without another person. So that's speaking to like your codependency towards them. Like you can't be your own person, right? You can't even develop enough courage to be on your own without this other person. I mean, what does that say about you, right?
Right. It says that you are deriving your happiness from other people and not from yourself. And that is a dangerous place to be. And also, I think like I can't live without you in the context of, maybe an argument, and you're arguing and somebody desperately says, I can't live without you, raises like a, self-harm flag with me.
Right. That's true. That's true. It depends on who you're with. But if someone to say that during that point, that's like, I can see why it can be looked at that way, But you know what, Jen, I can dream, because in the sort of romantic world of a Libra, there's a bed, there are sheets, there's a sunrise, there's a golden hour, there's those like little tiny moments between, I want to say 5 and 6 a.m. where everything's really still and you're listening to soft Kenny G on the radio or on your, on your CD player, because it's the only way that you could listen to Kenny G is on your CD player. There is a couple somewhere whispering into each other's ear, being like, I can't live without you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ugh.
So,
yuck.
Oh man, it took me down. It took me to a really beautiful place, Jen. Nothing like listening to Kenny G to get things going, All right. So another one, which is I was going to say, get over it, you're too sensitive, but I think that you said one that was actually very similar to that. Mm-hmm. Right? I think you said one's very similar. So this one is stop projecting your negativity onto me.
Oh my gosh, that's such a Gen Z thing to say.
And I had to bring that one in there.
Oh my gosh.
I had to bring it in because this is like this is one of the things I made a video about recently. I haven't posted it yet, about spiritual bypassing. This is one of those things that get on my goddamn nerves, Jen. Spiritual bypassing. It's sort of like holier than thou mentality,
Yes,
like
I can't stand it. Yeah.
You went to your yoga class and you had your nice little savasana and you're able to get yourself in the meditative state, and you come home and then your partner happens to be in a bad mood and you're like, hey, don't kill my vibe. Relax. It's like that sort of thing. So if somebody's like talking, happens to be your partner, and you're sharing some really intense emotions, let's just say, put it this way, like as an example, like you're home and your partner comes home and they happen to be in a really pissy mood, or they happen to be really upset. And sometimes that happens. When that happens to me, and my partner happens to be upset, I care about how she feels. If she happens to have had a bad day, I want to listen to what she has to say because I care about her. And my goal isn't to fix her problems. My goal is to listen, but I also want to create a safe environment so she can come down from that energy herself and revisit me in a softer, more vulnerable space, right? So the opposite of this is somebody that maybe doesn't really care about their partner or what they have to say, and they respond with something like, stop projecting your negativity onto me, peasant. They might as well say that at the end, they peasant. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Many people in the community are a bit sensitive about taking even small amounts of negativity, even from their partners, right? They are so sensitive, and that's fine because, it tends to attract a lot of empathic types, but we go through this sort of growing period because I feel like everybody at the beginning of their journey, especially in spirituality, goes through this, right? We get to experience this mystical bliss at least once, whether or not be through meditation or mystical experiences. We want to try and preserve that at all costs, like every single day, right? But it becomes an idea at some point. And when it becomes an idea, we lose sight of the fact that reality is still happening. And at some point, the idea of wanting to be happy all the time supersedes the reality that things just aren't that way all the time, right? And so we end up creating this sort of narrative that wants to control everything around us. And that involves undermining other people, making demeaning comments, putting other people down, right? And that just, that's not good vibes. So in your effort to try and create this good vibe space, you end up creating even worse vibes for yourself and for other people.
And for other people.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like relationships aren't about being positive and happy all the time. They're about creating a safe space where you and your partner can be authentic and real and explore a safe space with each other and feel safe to be who you want to be, whether or not to be happy or angry or sad. Because when we say, or when we ask our partners to stop projecting on us, we completely discount the deeper meaning in their feelings. So this comes back to something that we've been talking about, which is like you're communicating to them that you're on this vibe and they're over here, not where you are, completely divisive, completely polarizing, and you're not playing on the same team, right?
Yeah.
So when someone comes up to you and they're like, stop projecting your negativity onto me, you just respond to them and be like, shut the fuck up. Or you can just say, sit down. Sit down.
Go to bed.
Don't say that. Yeah, right? Go to bed, you're drunk. Something like that. It's like, go home, Eric, you're drunk. Oh my God. You know what? We should have added that to the list, Jen. That should be one of those common phrases to not say, go home, you're drunk. Imagine. What would you do if someone said that shit to you? I don't know. I'd probably find it really funny. Then I'd be like, yeah.
I'm very self-aware when I'm drunk, and I know that I'm too drunk, and I'll send myself home. And I'll just say,
really?
I'm going to put myself to bed. I'm too drunk.
Go home,
yeah,
Jen, you're drunk.
nothing good comes of that. That's for
sure. So when you get it, you more or less know that you probably need to go home because you're drunk, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
What else you get? What else you got?
That's it.
Anything else?
That's all.
Okay. All right. So I have, I'll go over one more.
Okay.
Which, you know what? I feel like we might have touched on this one. I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it. We kind of combined it with I'm sorry and something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry that you feel that way. And then there was one more that I had.
Okay.
Which is why did you ? Or even you should. Or even you should, right? Beginning phrases with you should communicates to the partner that they're not doing something that you think that they should be doing, right? It's sort of, in some ways, it kind of, we're going to talk about this in just a little bit. It creates a sort of power differential between partners. And it can eventually, at least from my perspective, make someone feel like they don't do enough or what they do isn't appreciated.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like a parental type of behavior, which is like, you should be doing
exactly
this.
what I was going to say. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, we don't want to feel like we're with our parents. I mean, that's a major turnoff, right? So when you're like trying to parent somebody and be like, hey, you should do this. You should do that. And it's also proclaiming that like they don't know any better and that you need to teach them.
Yeah. And that just starts role confusion, right? Like whenever you start acting like someone's parent and you're trying to reparent them. Actually, I was talking to, who was I talking to about this, about being in a relationship where you take on that role of trying to reparent someone and how damaging that is to the relationship. Yeah. Eek.
Caregiver relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, where you're having to pay like their mother, I know there's that whole sort of theory, I think in therapy, which is like we're all inadvertently or unconsciously looking for partners that are like our parent or maybe even the parent that wasn't available in our life. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to be with someone that treats you that way. You know what I mean? You also, you don't want to be with somebody where you have to end up being the parent for them.
No, of course not. That's not sexy. You don't want to have sex with your parents, and whenever whenever you start taking on the role where, you were acting like a parent, then, that person starts to feel like a child to you. And then it starts to feel like work and it starts to feel like, I've got to teach this person and watch everything that they do and double check everything and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It sucks all of the romance out of the relationship.
It sounds like almost like an energy of control too. When someone's like, oh, you should do this. You're like persuading them to do things, There's a whole lot of, ways that you can, in the same way that you wouldn't want to be with like a guy that gives you more friend vibes, because that would be like being with like your friend or your sister or your brother. A person that gives you like sister sibling vibes. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be somebody's parent. If you end up being somebody's parent, that person isn't ready for a relationship. That's for sure. They need to move back in with their parents so they can be properly taught to behave. Right? Okay, so
Yes.
just going back into this one, I know we talked about a lot of phrases that we shouldn't talk about, but I'd like to just kind of briefly go into phrases that we should use in relationships,
Okay.
right? And this is a practice. I tend to try and create a growth mentality, growth mindset when it comes to these things, which is don't focus on the negative. Like you could, it doesn't matter how healthy your relationship is. If you're focused on the negative, you can always find a million and one things that are negative about your relationship.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
why? Because you're human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every relationship has them. So there's no shortages of those, and they'll never, ever be. So if you want to go down that path of just focusing on the negative, trust me, you'll find it, right? And you can torture each other with that until the cows come home. You like that? Until the cows come home,
Yep.
the little southern thing.
Yeah.
Okay. But the way that I kind of look at it is a growth mindset, which is instead of focusing on the negative, focus on the things that go right in your relationship, the things that you
Yeah.
like about the person, the things that you love about your relationship. And phrases like this, I feel, right? When you're speaking to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
I
I
feel
feel. Mm-hmm.
like you're being this way. You're not being accusatory. You're not placing blame. You're not telling them that they're being this way or that way. When you say I feel, it's reinforcing that this is how you feel. These are your thoughts and your opinions about their behavior. So it's non-combative. It's non-violent communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you're having a conversation, say, I feel hurt right now. Like I feel this way, that way. So try that. I feel, and then I like it when,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like it
Yeah.
when. It's like, hey, you know what? I like it when you
That's a
take
good
out
one.
the trash. You know,
Yeah.
I like when you light the Nag Champa before I come home from work. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
It's like, I like when you Palo Santos our bedroom before we make love. You know?
Hmm.
Yeah. It's like, I like when you water my Monstera plants for me on the days when you know that like I'm going to be at work late or something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that.
Yeah. So like focusing on the things, and if you do this enough, if you say these affirming things to your partner like enough, it just sort of cultivates this like really positive and good vibe, good feeling type of energy. You
It
know,
does.
it makes you feel good.
You know,
It
and
makes you
saying
feel
thank
good.
you. You know,
Yeah.
showing appreciation for small things. So
Yeah.
that's a love language thing too, right? You know, my love
Yeah.
language is acts of service. So when Jeremy occasionally does the dishes, I say thank you to reinforce that good behavior and show appreciation. Like, I noticed that you did this and thank you.
Yeah. You're like, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Thank you is definitely an important one. One that I think is one of probably the most important is a perspective to always keep. Because when we're in, let's just say, heated exchanges with somebody else, it's easy to fall into the you versus me mentality, right?
Oh, big
Me
time.
versus you, right?
Yep.
But it's really important to understand that you are a we and not a me or a you, right? So when I have conversations with my significant other, I always try and use we, right? Like, what can we do? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think that we should do about this, right? You're being inclusive. You're letting them know that, like, hey, there's me and you as a we, and there's this love thing that we're both trying to nurture together, right? So never losing sight of the we, so that you don't fall into the you or me. There's this quote by Trevor Hall, good old Trevor Hall. He's a really amazing artist. He has this lyric, and it says, "I am I, you are you are me, we are we, family on the road to unity." Right?
Ooh,
I am I,
that's
you are
nice.
you are me, we are we. Right? It's a nice little mantra. So always
I like that.
see your partner and you as a we. You know, you can be individuals. You can be your own person, but when it comes to like the real hard hitting crazy arguments and shit like that, never lose sight of the fact that you guys are a we, and anything that happens between everything that happens between you and them happens to both of you guys. There are no winners in arguments,
Agreed.
you know, and if there's a winner, you automatically are a loser. You know, both of you, you automatically lose. It's not about being right. It's about understanding each person and the role in the situation. Right? And if you care about your partner, if you love them, you will take the time to understand them. Right? And if you find yourself not caring about somebody enough to do the work and wanting to understand them, then you just got to close that chapter and move on. Find somebody that will spend the time to want to understand you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah. So my final thoughts on this one here is build, don't tear down. Right?
I like
Build
that.
and don't tear down. It's so easy to tear down a relationship. You can tear it down in a matter of 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be with somebody for like 5 or 6 years, and you can have worked carelessly on building a relationship. And that's difficult. That's difficult to do, to build that trust over time. But you can tear down your relationship in like 20 minutes. You can completely destroy that entire thing within minutes if you allow it to.
Oh, yeah.
So always remembering that. You always want to build the relationship, not tear it down.
And,
right?
Build it on a solid foundation too. Trying to build a house on sand is not going to work. So if there are already major problems in the relationship early on, you're going to have a very, very hard time building a stable house when the foundation isn't there.
Yeah, that's why you got to be really honest with yourself in the beginning about
That's
whether
right.
or not you really feel like you can be with this person by reading all the cues and seeing whether or not they respect your boundaries. Because you know what? People will go to great lengths to change another person that they don't really like very much, or they have issues
Right.
with them, and they will stay in a relationship that is toxic in some crazy hope that they can change them.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels doing that, but it could also lead to a lot of toxic behavior, because we can try and change that. We can try and change that person and fail, and then ridicule them for not being who we want them to be.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you're taking it out on your partner that they can't be the person that you want them to be. That is some crazy toxic stuff. You don't want to get involved in that sort of thing. So it's like, it takes a lot of courage to be honest with yourself and how you feel, especially if somebody's really attractive. But you have to care more about yourself than you do about somebody that's attractive if you don't
Yeah.
want to find yourself in these types of situations, you know?
That's for sure. That is for sure.
You want to find yourself in a relationship where you feel accepted, right? But you don't want to change them. You want to be in a relationship where you feel like that they're okay, that they have enough willpower and strength to overcome, their own obstacles and to contribute to your relationship, and be with somebody that you can appreciate, not somebody that you feel a need to possess or, feel a need to try and change in some way,
Yeah. Change,
And,
control, parent, manipulate, all of those things.
Yeah. And I think the moral of the story for me is always stay conscious and be mindful of the words that you say. That's what this whole thing, I think, is about, right? This starts with the words that we say to ourselves too. Because if we talk to our partners in this way, chances are we have the same narrative going on in our minds about how we talk to ourselves too, right? If we're okay with talking to somebody that way, we're probably comfortable with telling crazy shit like that to ourselves as well. Oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough, And what we project is a clear indication of how we also communicate to ourselves, right? So it reminds me of something that I heard a long time ago, which is something that I always try and remember when it comes to this sort of thing, which is be careful of the thoughts that you think, because you are listening.
That's right.
Right? And then there's another thing that I used to use in my sound baths all the time. Whenever I used to close out the space after my sound bath, I would always say, only speak when your words are more beautiful than silence. Right? Do not speak unless your words can help and are meaningful. Right? Because you can still communicate anger and sadness and fear without hurting another person.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people on Twitter that need to hear that.
Oh my gosh, Twitter, Jen.
It's madness. It is madness.
That is an entirely different ecosystem of anger and hate and just wild emotions,
It is like spinning around in toilet water. It is horrible.
Yeah.
I hate Twitter.
There's something about that too. It's like, where did people come up with the sudden courage to just say things that are mean just for the sake of saying them? I've thought a lot about this too, which is that, because we live in the digital age, everybody's become sort of an armchair warrior, which means that they don't have to confront the person face to face, right? And the way that I grew up is that you don't say something mean to somebody right? Like something that you wouldn't say to your parents. But people are like, I'll never see this person in my life. I'll never meet them before. I'll never have to come face to face. I'm just going to unload and say a bunch of really, really crazy shit to this person that I don't know. And there's just something really responsible and sad about that.
Super sad.
You know?
Super sad.
Like, imagine how much bullying goes on with that. But I want to end it on a good note, Jen. Focus on what you love. Yeah. Focus on what you love about the other person, right? Focus on what you love about each other and build from there. You know, we can find a million things to not like about somebody because people are not perfect. But when we focus on what we love about the relationship, we give our relationship the opportunity to grow through what makes our relationship strong, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's just like manifesting, you know, whenever you are focused on the negative, only more negative presents itself, you know? So if you focus on the positive things, then more positive things will present themselves.
Right. Exactly. It's all the mindset, you know? Like, first of all, you have to first really care about your partner. You have to really love them. You know, you guys gotta be on the same team. You guys gotta be on the same team. Not just be in a relationship with someone that like you kind of like, but kind of don't like at the same time, but kind of like, but kind of don't like at the same time. You know, you gotta go all in, or you don't do it at all.
Life's too short. Yeah.
Anything that's worth doing.
Somebody you really like. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what Tom Hanks said in A League of Their Own. He says, anything that's worth doing is worth doing right. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in to Nobodies podcast. Thank you for joining us. This was an interesting one. It has me thinking about the things that I've said in the past, things that I definitely still need to work on, and areas of improvement, of course, because the relationships are a practice. So we're hoping that you guys were able to take something good from this. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us, of course, on Instagram. That's where we're at most of the time. Send us topic recommendations. We'd always like to hear them. You could also watch the videos on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. We saw some people leaving some comments with some really good stuff. We had a topic recommendation the other day. We might end up putting that one on a podcast soon. And if you guys are on Apple Podcasts, feel free to leave a review. Let us know how we're doing. Until then, we'll talk to you next time, friends. Namaste.
Namaste.